Okay, first things first, we need to talk about some definitions. You have flipped classroom. And flipped classroom has been used by a number of different people in a number of different organizations. And while everybody has their idea of flipped learning, let's figure out kind of where it came from and where it might be going. So first things first, it was originally set down and pioneered by John Bergman and Aaron Sams in the early 2000s out in Colorado with their flipped classroom. They very quickly moved from a flipped classroom to what would be considered flipped learning or even flipped mastery. And he has some great resources at Flip Learning Global Initiative. So go check John out. And if you want to look even back a little further, there were some predecessors and some precursors to flipped learning. But really what it took was the broad acceptance of the internet and the broad acceptance of one-to-one technology, or even just access to digital media. Because access is still one of the biggest keys that every teacher that's looking at flipped learning needs to take into account before we go any further with flipped learning. But let's talk about the definition as it's best used today. And if I go to the Flip Learning Network, the Flip Learning Network, or at fliplearning.org, we come up with 4 pillars. Those 4 pillars are flexible environment, then you have a learning culture, then you have intentional content, and finally you have a professional educator. So all of those pillars put together, from flexible environment, learning culture, intentional content, and professional educator, those are the 4 signifying pillars of a good flip. Because here's the challenge. Of all the things that are called flip, it's not video in and of itself that makes it flip learning. Because if there's no learning taking place, it's not a good flip. If it's just using technology, that's not really changing or moving the environment, it's not making a learning culture, and it's not really intentional content. And so we need to make sure that whatever we put it forward as flip learning actually hits on all those pillars. So we're going to start with the first of those pillars right here.